For 3 weeks, 2 ships have been circling a floating starship in the middle of the Indian Ocean. On Friday, many were convinced the story had just ended, 5,500 meters below the surface. Was Ship 40 gone? What actually happened out there is a true hero moment for SpaceX. Back on land, SpaceX quietly filed paperwork that tells you exactly what Florida is about to become. Let's take a look at Starship Project Ignition. My name is Felix. Welcome to What About It? Let's dive right in. Starship updates. 25 days. That is how long Ship 40 has been floating in the Indian Ocean since its splashdown on July 24th. And what started as a victory lap has turned into the strangest recovery operation in spaceflight history. Let me bring you up to speed. The last week out there was a roller coaster. A week ago, satellite imagery gave us our first hard look at the situation. Here, everything looked fine as it can be if a starship is floating in the ocean. Now, new but sadly unconfirmed information explains why this is taking so long. According to the information, Ship 40 has rolled onto its side, about 70 degrees over. The tow fenders that crews attached in the first days are gone, removed during earlier maneuvers. And apparently there's a large patch of tiles missing on the payload bay section. For that spot to lose tiles, something must have hit it. Maybe the fenders? Maybe the tow lines? There is sadly not much more info about it. Controlling the starship in the ocean during bad weather is comparable to bull riding. A 52-meter steel cylinder, half flooded, lying on its side in open ocean swell. Every time it gets hit by a wave, it rolls around, and your team is trying to put a line on it. That's not easy at all. By last Tuesday, the picture looked like this. Normand Ranger and Go Australis were pacing the drifting ship toward the northeast, back into Australian waters around Christmas Island. They weren't towing it, they were just keeping watch. And then came Friday. In the morning, Normand Ranger suddenly picked up speed and left, 8 knots steady, away from the ship. If you leave at 8 knots, you are not towing anything. It's just simply too fast. The ship-watching community that has formed around this bizarre situation by now said Ship 40 had been scuttled. Released, flooded, and sent down over water 5.5 kilometers deep with Australis standing by to watch it go. That claim went around the world in an afternoon, and I'll be honest, for a few hours on Friday it looked plausible. But hold on, because we kept watching. Australis wasn't leaving. She stayed right there with the ship. You don't post a guard on something you just sank. And Ranger? Ranger sailed straight to Christmas Island into Flying Fish Cove, a tiny port that mostly ships phosphate and fuel. She stopped there just long enough for a supply run, and by early Saturday, she was already heading back out to Ship 40 and Australis. Not a funeral after all, a pit stop, much better. Sunday morning then came the update we'd been waiting for 3 weeks. Both vessels moving east together at a steady 2 knots after a series of maneuvers. The speed and the formation point at one thing. Ship 40 may finally be in a more reliable tow. Granted, 2 knots is walking pace. This leg alone takes days, but after 25 days, multiple failed rigging attempts, a full rollover, and 1 premature obituary, SpaceX still hasn't let go of this ship. They've kept vessels on station the entire time. No space mission trusts a single instrument. You confirm a finding across several instruments before you believe the results. Now you can do the same when using AI with the help of today's sponsor, Mammoth AI. Mammoth is one subscription that puts the leading AI models side by side. GPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok, Mistral, and more. You're never locked into a single provider. No separate accounts, no separate builds, and it adds the newest models as they launch. Ask one model a question, then with a single click send that same prompt to another to compare and challenge the answer. That is my favorite part. I try a few different AIs and use whichever one fits the task best. You can spin up focused projects with their own instructions, analyze documents and images, run deep research, even generate videos, all in one place. Mammoth never trains its models on your prompts, and your history is yours to delete anytime. Plans start at just $10 per month. Try Mammoth AI now at mammoth.ai. Try it out today. Help What About It in return. Thank you so much. Whatever the heat shield data on that hull is worth, SpaceX clearly thinks it's worth all of this. Good luck, Ship 40. You can do it. What do you think? Will Ship 40 make it into port? Let me know in the comments. Last Tuesday, Musk gave a company update to SpaceX employees for about half an hour and announced that this will now happen every 3 months after each earnings call. Yeah, that is likely because of the IPO. Now that SpaceX is publicly traded, Musk simply can't say what he wants and when he wants to anymore. And most of the coverage focused on AI announcements. Fair enough, they are huge and we'll touch on them. But I went through the whole thing and the most important material in there is about the rocket. First, let's do a quick health check. Dragon has flown 78 crew members and is closing in on 100. Falcon flies its 700th mission next month, with a single booster hitting flight number 37 this month. Starlink sits at 10,900 satellites in orbit, more than twice as many as everyone else combined. And Starshield has pulled in $6 billion in new contracts this year alone. Yeah. That is SpaceX right now, the undisputed heavyweight champion in the worldwide spaceflight market. But what's to come? Musk put up Starship's job description in one sentence. Take humanity from roughly 2,500 tons to orbit per year, which is where we are today, to over 1 million tons per year. And in his words, maybe even 10 million. When you hear a number like that, it either washes over you as typical Musk scale talk, or you do what we did 2 weeks ago and run it through the cadence calculator. Remember our episode 564 scenario, 1 launch per day, the one everyone called optimistic?
Now with Starship, we'll be aiming to go from somewhere around 2,500 tons a year to orbit to millions of tons per year to orbit. And to do so at a pretty short period of time.
That gets you 36,525 tons a year, barely 3.5% of Musk's target. To reach 1 million tons a year at 100 to 150 tons per flight, you need a launch roughly every hour around the clock, all year. Yeah.
We designed this pad to be able to support a launch every 60 minutes.
Sound familiar? A launch every 60 minutes indefinitely. That is the Pad 2 design spec straight from the Critical Path documentary. We now have the same claim from 3 independent directions. The pad engineers built it into steel. Musk told the earnings call he expects at least 1 Starship flight per day, roughly a year from now. And on Tuesday, he gave employees the tonnage version of the same math. The 1 million tons per year and the launch per hour are not 2 ambitions. They are 1 ambition in 2 units. And the update answered what all that lift is for. Starlink today is 10,900 satellites. Musk's stated target with V3 and beyond, 100,000 satellites. At 60 V3 satellites per Starship launch, the constellation alone is a backlog of roughly 1,500 Starship flights. Add the AI satellites on top, and the slide in the room said SpaceX is striving to carry 51% of the internet. Musk himself went further out loud and said Starlink might end up carrying over 90% of all internet traffic worldwide. Which brings us to the AI part. I'll keep this tight because for us, the rocket is the story. AI revenue will exceed all other SpaceX revenue combined as soon as next month. And Musk expects AI to be 99% of SpaceX's value within 5 years. The Memphis cluster draws 1.4 gigawatts today. 10 gigawatts is the target for the end of next year. Terrafab got name-checked as a key part of the plan, and the Starmine satellite factory is planned with over 1,000 acres. AI. Here's why any of this belongs on a spaceflight channel. Every piece of that AI empire is a payload, tens of thousands of satellites, plus their replacement cycles. None of it reaches orbit without the vehicle we watch get built every week. Strip away the AI framing, and Tuesday's update was the largest launch manifest ever described out loud. Near the end, Musk told the room that anyone at SpaceX who wants to go to the moon or Mars will be able to go. His words? You have my word. That'll be a monumental task. Yay, you've reached the middle of the video. You made it. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching and liking the video. If you're among the 40% who haven't subscribed yet, and there was at least one video you learned something new from, it would mean the world to me if you did. It's free, and it genuinely helps more people find my channel. Want to make my world even easier? There's only one place you'd rather be, the Y Members Club on Patreon and right here on YouTube. Click the card or the join button under the video. You are the reason we are doing this. Thank you so much. You rock. Thank you. While everyone was watching the ocean, SpaceX filed some paperwork in Florida that deserves far more attention than it got. Last Wednesday, we spotted an environmental resource permit application submitted to the St. Johns River Water Management District. The what? Thank you, Julia. Project Ignition. Sounds interesting, right? The filing describes, quote, a static fire test stand and associated infrastructure to verify post-production testing of Starship and to support static fire tests. End quote. Yeah, definitely interesting. Location? The west end of Schwarz Road, or Schwarz Road as we say in Germany, on the Roberts Road campus at Kennedy Space Center near the Indian River Lagoon. Roughly 55 acres of development on a parcel of about 101 acres. Not too far from the Gigabay that's going vertical there right now. If you follow Starbase, you already know what this is. Project Ignition is Massey's for Florida. At Starbase, ships get built in the factory, tested at Massey's, and only then do they go anywhere near a launch pad. The pad launches, the test site tests. This separation is the entire reason that Pad 2 can have high cadence at some point. Nobody uses the launch mount for a test campaign. Florida had no equivalent. Until now, the planned solution was for Starships at the Cape to do their static fires at Pad 39A itself. It is separately mentioned in the environmental approval, up to 44 ship and 44 booster static fires a year. And ever since I read this back when the environmental assessment was released, I thought that would be a strange thing to do. Because every day a vehicle sits on that pad for a test is a day the pad can't be used for launches. You cannot run a launch per hour ambition through a pad that doubles as a test stand. Project Ignition fixes that before it ever becomes a problem. Test the stages right next door, roll them back to the base, same as at Starbase, and 39A stays what it was built for, a launch pad. What will be interesting to see is if SpaceX goes for a test facility that can handle both ship and booster. Massey's at Starbase only handles ships. Boosters are static fired at the pad. They are so powerful that a test pad would need to easily be double the size. Blue Origin appears to be building its own second stage test site near its KSC campus as well, which means the Kennedy Space Center visitor complex is about to sit within earshot of routine static fires from two different companies. All right, now let's take a look at Flight 14. Any news? Ship 41 is engine complete inside Megabay 2 and prepared to roll to Massey's for its static fire campaign. A road closure is still missing though. Crickets. Nothing. It is unclear why it is waiting in Megabay 2. Maybe it is just very comfortable in there? We don't know. As soon as there is a closure set from production to Massey's, I'll certainly jump out of my chair. And Booster 21 is receiving its engines in Megabay 1 ahead of its own static fire. The FCC paperwork still points at August 28th. That is 10 days from now. But there is one bit of information that reached us very unexpectedly. Yeah. On August 14th, NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman sat down for an announcement at Kennedy Space Center. While I can't really report on the event because NASA didn't approve my attendance, one detail was recorded.
If they're able to launch again, in early September after their last launch and continue to track inside of a month, potentially every couple of weeks before the end of the year, we're gonna feel very good.
Isaacman mentioned early September. Does he know more? Very likely so. We might have to wait another week or two. Both static fires have to happen, hopefully without any visible problem. SpaceX went from Booster 20's static fire to a launch attempt in 1 week last time. So we know that they can be very quick. Watch the road to Messi's. When Ship 41 rolls out, we'll know more. Until then, we'll watch the heavy lift team closely. While most eyes are watching New Glenn and Starship, there is another large rocket being prepared for its debut at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station's LC-16. Who already knows which rocket it is after mentioning the pad? It might not quite match the roughly 98 meters of a New Glenn, let alone the over 124 meters of a V3 Starship. But it does not have to shy away from those, standing at very respectable 86.6 meters. That's taller than 90% of all flying rockets right now. And that rocket is Terran R by Relativity, a partially reusable mid to heavy lift rocket. It will start with a reusable first stage, but full reusability is planned for the future. It is a two-stage launch vehicle designed to deliver payloads that exceed Falcon 9's capability. In a reuse scenario, it'll be able to lift 23.5 tons to low Earth orbit. This number can rise to 33.5 tons in an expandable configuration. Alright then, let's have a look at how close we are to actually seeing it fly. Relativity's own target is no earlier than 2026. There's not that much time left, considering we're already well in the second half of the year. But recent updates on completed milestones paint a positive picture. In April, acceptance testing on the Aeon-R engines had become a regular event. The vacuum-optimized Aeon-V completed full-duration mission duty cycles, meaning it burned as long or longer than it would on a real flight. And what comes after acceptance testing on a rocket engine? Right, they are installed on an actual stage, a very large actual stage. Relativity needed a bigger test stand, and whenever you hear big rocket test stand in the United States, chances are it is related to Stennis Space Center. That is the same facility where Blue Origin is now testing at as well. It is simply the place pretty much everyone goes to test big rocket stages, and it has been for a long time. Well, except for SpaceX, they do their own thing. I'll give you the reason in a minute. Relativity stripped down the A2 test stand and started installing systems and piping to support the new rocket stage. The refurbishment includes a massive water-cooled flame diverter and a new acoustic water ring. At Ignition, a rocket tries to destroy its own launch pad in two different ways, and water is the cheapest defense against both. The first threat? That's the exhaust itself. A supersonic jet of gas coming out at extreme temperatures. If you let that blast straight down onto flat concrete, it bounces right back up into the engines and the base of the rocket. Not good. It also chews the pad to rubble over repeated firings, so you build a flame diverter. Right, SpaceX? Sorry, I had to. The second threat is sound. Rocket engines lighting up put out an acoustic shockwave north of 150 decibels right under the engines. Those pressure waves reflect off the pad and hammer back into the rocket, this time as violent vibration. If you saw the very first Starship launch, you know what I mean. Launching a large rocket without a water deluge system in place produced the now famous concrete tornado. The same month, the structural test stand in Long Beach was modified for a new round of testing starting in June. In late July, Relativity finished structural qualification on a dedicated first stage test article. This stage was literally tortured and had to endure more than on an actual flight. A lot more. The test article endured over 400 pressurization cycles. While pressurized, the engineers squeezed it with 1,950 tons of force. But it held. I bet that was a huge confidence boost for the team. Terran R's second stage kicked off its own campaign around the same time. The pressure test past flight pressure was the first step. They also took a close look at the plumbing during this process. So now you're probably asking yourself when we're getting to the fiery part of this all, right? The next milestone will fix that. Engine integration has begun. The first A&R engines are now mounted onto the first stage's thrust structure. That is the part of the rocket that takes the full force of all the engines while trying not to turn into a pancake. Terran R has plenty of thrust. The first stage alone is powered by 13 A&R engines. At liftoff, they deliver a combined thrust of around 1,586 tons. For comparison, Falcon 9 sits at roughly half of that. If all this goes as planned, Relativity will be much closer to an actual launch attempt. Once the engines are installed back at Relativity's Long Beach factory, the first stage can return to Stennis for the fiery part. And it'll be a big event with such a large stage. If all tests come out as expected, the whole show moves on to the launch site at the Cape, where it will eventually meet the top half of the rocket. And that second stage is in a similar situation right now. It started cryo-proof testing at Stennis in early August, validating its structural integrity. And just like the lower stage that it will ride on, it was tested beyond expected flight loads. Once cryotesting wraps up, it will also return to the factory to be mated with its single Aeon V vacuum engine before returning to Stennis yet again for the hot fire. And only after that milestone is ticked off the list will it advance to LC-16 to meet the first stage. Remember Project Ignition from earlier? That is why SpaceX wants its static fire stand close to the factory. You save a lot of miles. And that's it for today. Smash the like button. Subscribe for more. This is what fuels the algorithm. This is how you can help us for free. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. Our all-time favorite Raptor engine design and countless others are there for you to explore. Click the card or the US or worldwide links in the description. History is being written in real time. If you want to catch the other historic stories from recent weeks, click the video on screen and continue the journey. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode.